going to look back to Tennyson for a moment and read another section of In Memoriam. Okay. I dreamed there would be spring no more, that nature's ancient power was lost. The streets were black with smoke and frost. They chattered trifles at the door. I wandered from the noisy town. I found a wood with thorny boughs. I took the thorns to bind my brows. I wore them like a civic crown. I met with scoffs, I met with scorns from youth and babe and hoary hairs. They called me in the public squares the fool that wears a crown of thorns. They called me fool, they called me child. I found an angel of the night. The voice was low, the look was bright. He looked upon my crown and smiled, and reached the glory of a hand that seemed to touch it into leaf. The voice was not the voice of grief. The words were hard to understand. Is it a religious poem? It makes use of a religious image, an angel. It makes use of it. But notice it's an angel of the night. An angel of the night. Why that? What is the message? Hard to understand. And notice the context. I dreamed there would be spring no more, that nature's ancient power was lost. The streets were black with smoke and frost. They chattered trifles at the door. Even universal ecological decay, the end of the world, is met only by people gossiping. This is coming from within.
I saw it visually.
Sure. Very visually. Very visually. And I think the importance is this. It escapes Tennyson's conscious understanding. It escapes his conscious understanding. It's not dependent on whatever theory he has of it. Are you following me? It is a vision. It comes from within. We associate, heretofore people associated the idea of vision with something grand, something religious, something transcendent, but visions can also come from and be about the unconscious mind.
They're dark. Of course. Is it very dark?
Yes?
Oh, yeah.
The dramatic monologue that you were talking about before, is it an accidental byproduct of the writing, as you just described for Tennyson, or do some of the authors understand that they're speaking on two levels?
Browning definitely understands. Browning definitely understands, but look, important thing about Browning. Browning has a religious view, develops a religious view, that very much resembles the sort of thing that many people believe now. He believes that God is, or God manifests himself through multiplicity of viewpoints and different forms of vitality. In this, he retains a certain faithfulness with the Romantics, who were interested in energy, whether it was whatever form it took. But Browning said, God is my universe that feels and knows. He's a kind of pantheist. There's consciousness everywhere. Everything has a consciousness. Everything can be consciousness. But for him, religion, faith, Christianity especially, is a matter of feeling. I feel Christ. I feel grace. I feel mercy. I don't want to think about it, nor should I be expected to think about it. All his life he has to read about the higher criticism, about the criticisms of T.H. Huxley and other scientists and geologists, the rest of it, Darwin, and it just annoys him, it irritates him. He doesn't want to go there. He's very definitely working with the other side of his brain. Okay, you can find this emotionally satisfying. I find it sentimental.
In the Tennyson poem, in Memoriam, he seems to separate God and nature. Could you go into that a little bit?
You have to, okay, I only select this very long poem. And one thing that happens in the course of In Memoriam is that he develops a sense of, call it grace, but it is a very 19th century sort of grace. It is all process. It is all development. God is something coming, okay? God is evolving. We're at the ending of In Memoriam, where with the man that with me trod this planet was a noble type, appearing ere the time was ripe, that friend of mine who lives with God, that God who ever is and loves, one God, one law, one element, and one far off divine event towards which the whole creation moves. Moves, 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 moves. The great philosopher of the 19th century was not a Brit. The great philosopher of the 19th century was Hegel. You may know something about Hegel. Hegel believes that history is truth. Long before Darwinian evolution, Hegel believes that every stage of philosophy, every stage of culture evolves towards not just an understanding of nature, but control. So that ultimately there will be God, and it'll be us. It'll be intelligence. The key to 19th century thought, what unifies 19th century thought is some idea or other of change and development and fulfillment arriving from change and development. The accomplishments of 19th century thought, leaving the hard sciences aside, are all involved with this idea. There was a man named Bopp, German. Bopp looked at the European languages and he said, where did they come from? And he noticed the way a number of people had the similarity between many European languages and Hindu and Sanskrit before Hindu. So he had the idea, okay, originally there was a group of people that spoke a certain language and they moved in different directions. Some went into India, some went west into Europe, and these groups split off, and that's how the modern languages developed. And working backwards, he reconstructed Indo-European, the language that was spoken by the original Indo-European people who lived in what we call the Caucasus or Central Asia, something like 4000 BC. An incredible accomplishment. But notice, in the 19th century, this sort of thing was called linguistics. At the beginning of the 20th century, there was a Frenchman named Saussure who said, even if Bopp is correct, and it apparently seems to be, all we have studied is the history of languages. What makes language language? What is language in itself? And that's a very different question, which hopefully we can come to next time.
Did Esperanto come out of this?
Yes, very much so. Zamenhof, the inventor of Esperanto, is thinking in terms of a globalized society. You need a trade language, and it would be nice if we could get cultures together, understanding each other, so that we could cut down on war. That would be progress. So he puts together some Romance roots and some Teutonic roots and a lot of Slavic roots and comes up with, I have great sympathy for Esperanto. I quite like it.
It's a great idea.
Okay.
English took over.
Yeah. Power tends to win, rather than generosity and even-handedness. Swinburne. There is a book I will recommend very strongly. The author's name is Mario Praz, P-R-A-Z, Mario Praz, and the book is called The Romantic Agony. The Romantic Agony. And Mario Praz was a little wizened, creepy guy, and he liked to find little wizened, creepy byways in the history of literature. So he starts with La Belle Dame Sans Merci of Keats, and he follows her adventures throughout the 19th century. The image of the beautiful woman without mercy.
What's the title again?
The Romantic Agony by Mario Praz. Okay, Swinburne came from money. He's a little red-headed guy. Another dope addict. And also a masochist. He composed his great Ode to Liberty as he was walking back and forth to a brothel where he paid good money to get himself roundly flogged. Sex and pain, pleasure and pain, are merged in Swinburne's mind. Love and death. Some of you know opera, the Liebestod, love, death motif in Wagner, Tristan. Important 19th century idea. For him, for Swinburne, this was an ongoing emotional reality. So think of Keats's lovely La Belle Dame Sans Merci and see what happens to it in this incredibly long poem of Swinburne.
I thought it came from, there was a line in the poem, maybe not this poem, maybe I have it mixed up, was we had great fun before Christianity, but now
Different
there's
poem.
sin.
Different poem.
Different
That's Wikiste Galilei. You have
Okay.
conquered Galilee. This is Laus Veneris, praise to Venus. Wagner has a whole opera on this theme, Tannhäuser, about a knight who turns aside from being a knight and self-denying, and he lives with Venus in the Hörsaal, the Hörsaal in Swinburne's poem, the Hörsaal, a mountain in central Germany, which is supposedly where Venus lives. And he really, gets tired of it and would like to leave, but he can't, because after all, it is pleasure. Very important.